Councillor Toohey. Are there any additions? Oops, we've lost Councillor Davenport.
She's there in.
Oh, she's there in spirit. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so seeing no additions on the question, all those in favor, opposed, carried. We have the minutes of the regular meeting of council held Tuesday, October 13. I move that the minutes of that meeting be adopted as presented. Councillor Anstett seconds. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor, opposed, carried. All right, we have one delegation, that is the Ashcroft Slough Society. Just a note, you have 10 minutes and that includes questions from council if you want to leave us time to ask questions.
Absolutely.
And we don't make decisions about any requests at this meeting, those will be brought forward to a future meeting.
Understood.
All right, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I'm Daniel Collett, and I'm here with Gloria Mertens, and we are representing the Ashcroft Slough Society. So we have a little presentation for you here. It should take under 10 minutes. Our objectives of the presentation are to give a brief history of what's brought us before the council, introduce the council to the Ashcroft Slough Society, to request a grant in aid of $500 as seed money to support the advocacy work of the society, to request that the village be named as our umbrella organization to dispense any grant monies received until we become a nonprofit society in a year. That was Jackie Taggart that asked for that for us. To ask the village for a letter of support in principle for our purpose. Okay, Yogi. So the community has asked for, what has it asked for? In February 2013, 6 pages of signatures were presented to council asking for a walking path down Evans Road and permanent public access to the Ashcroft Slough. The public was assured by the mayor of the time that it was the intention of the property owner to maintain public access. Another councillor suggested that council pay to have a study done to see what would be needed to accomplish the request. Okay, next one. Now, 7 years later, there has still been no follow-through on these commitments. Ashcroft Terminal's recent expansion has resulted in the corporation's installing of a gate, the decommissioning of a road used formerly for access, and the increased surveillance of its properties. An overwhelming response to a petition respectfully requested that Ashcroft Terminal commit to creating and implementing a plan for community access to the Ashcroft Slough, induced a response from the corporation, and it's there for you to read. So the response from AT, a community working group initiated by Ashcroft Terminal was proposed and created in early May. All selected representatives, except the 3 designated community members, had direct associations with the company as either employees, former employees, business partners, or contractors. The community working group was formed as an advisory group to make recommendations about recreational enhancements Ashcroft Terminal could contribute to as an alternative to access to the slough. So what was discussed? Talks were respectful, community members were tolerated in presenting information on the different user groups, the activities in which they participate, and the comments community members wrote on the petition. Members of the working group were steered away from discussing the various solutions proposed for access to the slough. It was felt by the community members on the working group that the voice of the community user groups was dismissed. So then, who is the Ashcroft Slough Society? Ashcroft Slough Society was incorporated on September 1st, 2020 as a voice for these user groups to not just be heard, but be listened to. The society supports the inland port, but it is convinced that economic development can coexist with community well-being. The educational opportunities for such cooperation are profound. Our board of directors are longtime community volunteers vested in the community and passionate about working for the well-being of present and future generations. And then the next one, why is access so important? People today, especially the youth, recognize the need for work-play balance in their life. Recruitment and retention of workers requires quality jobs as well as opportunities for well-being to keep them in and part of the community. Green, wild spaces, especially those located near water sources, have these opportunities. Nature therapy has exceptional benefits for health and wellness. The Ashcroft Slough has a long history of shared space. It has a role in protecting conservation and heritage values and in maintaining options for recreation opportunities. What are we proposing as a working solution? The Ashcroft Slough Society proposes these compromises. A pedestrian-only access to address ecological and heritage conservation, tunnel access to avoid any rail conflicts and maintain efficient rail operations, signage similar to that found at skateboard park entrance to limit liability, a trail to skirt the high water mark and avoid most of the private property concerns, and stewardship of the trail to mitigate any risks associated with debris or plant growth. Why has this been an issue? Ashcroft Terminal is exerting its proprietary rights for reasons it says of safety, security, and liability. However, railway operations are safer than highways, borne out by yearly summary fatality statistics. Note that there is no fence by the CP tracks in the busiest part of Ashcroft, the downtown area. An engaged public can be the eyes and ears, if embraced by the company, for any untoward activities and report these to the authorities. Amendments to the Occupiers Liability Act reduce duty of care obligations for anyone entering another entity's property. Posted signs can also reduce claims. So what are we seeking from the council? Council members are elected to represent the interest of the public it serves. We are looking for financial support so that we can continue our advocacy. We are looking for the municipality to be our umbrella agency for any grants that we may be able to secure for this advocacy work. We are looking for a letter of support in principle indicating that council is in favor of our purpose to obtain safe, legal, pedestrian access to the Ashcroft Slough. We want to hear that the proposal for safe, legal pedestrian access is a feasible and desirable outcome for the community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, Councillor Davenport, I haven't forgotten you. Does anyone have any comments, questions? No? Councillor Davenport, did you have anything?
Not at this time, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nadine.
Councillor Davenport, Councillor Toohey.
Sure, why not? Thank you, Mayor Roden. I'm just wondering, you mentioned recreation, various recreations down there. What kind of recreation are you thinking?
Well, it's a very long list, but if you go on the Ashcroft Slough Society website, you can see all the user groups that we've thought of so far and that have come forward. But it's I suppose starts with fishing, and it goes through family recreation activities down there. People swim in the summer. They go down there and cross-country ski in the winter, snowshoe. There's all kinds of things that happen. It's a very long list.
There's a slide with the user groups.
Pardon me?
There's a slide with all the user groups.
Okay.
There is a slide. If you go back, there is a slide, yes. We kind of went through it quickly, but I think it's fifth slides. Yes. It's what was discussed, and it shows the user groups there. And Debbie, you guys have a copy
Yep.
of all of this,
Yep.
so you can.
So I'm just, oh yeah, I see there.
Yeah, walking, dog walking, fishing, swimming, wading, bird watching, artists go there, solitude seekers go there, animal observers, gold panning, photography, books.
Have you
Sandcastle
done an
building.
actual study of how many people actually have used it during a year?
No, one of the things that was discussed with Jackie Taggart was that very thing. And one of the grants that we're going to be applying for, if council agrees to be our umbrella organization, it would be for that purpose, to do a study on feasibility and to gather that information, all the numbers and so on, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned stewardship of the property. Do you envision a particular group of people who would be the stewards of the property?
Yeah, Ashcroft Slough Society is wanting to be stewards of the.
And have you any thoughts on what that would entail? Like, what does that go mean picking up litter or on?
Yeah, I mean, we're new at this. We want it to be a safe and fun place, and of course, it's always, people have always treated it with respect. And if they didn't, there were groups of people that went down that, like, the next day after a party and picked up bottles and things like that. But,
It's similar to
Yeah.
Adopt a Trail.
Yeah.
Adopt a Street in Ashcroft, you have already Adopt a Street and Adopt a Trail.
yeah, yes, and the answer to your question is going to evolve over time. Yeah, but mainly we want to advocate for the use of that area. That's just a few minutes from town. It's a fantastic area. It's one of the most beautiful spots in the interior of BC, and we should have access to it.
Okay. And time for one more question. Anyone from council have anything they'd like to ask? No? No? All right, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank
I
you for
recognize that
listening to
picture of the
us.
gentleman curling.
Yes.
So, sorry, your worship, can I speak?
At public input.
Yeah,
Public input.
when we finish this, we're
Oh,
going to
okay.
public input next, so
Okay.
there'll be a time for questions, public input.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Collett.
Okay, and I have to go to my choir practice. All right, thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Okay,
so
you don't need it. Okay,
we do
fine.
move on to public input. So questions and comments from members of the public, people in the gallery. So if you have a question or comment, put your hand up. And yeah, well, we'll go with Patty first because she indicated she had something. And if you could just say your name and where you live, please.
Thank you, your worship. Patty Kinvig. I'm the assistant terminal manager at Ashcroft Terminal. I just wanted to note that, and I'm not sure if it's been shared yet, but CN has officially sent a letter in, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but they have basically said, which they've been saying all along, is that they will not entertain any crossing requests over, under anything at our location, whether it's on our private property or just adjacent to our property. They will not entertain any requests. And then further to that, I'd just like to say that, well, like, we put up a gate to limit access to our private property. All we did was remove the access to an illegal crossing. That crossing that people have used on our site has always been illegal, so it's not like we removed access to a legal crossing. It was always illegal. Thank you.
Thank you. And other questions, Collett? Yes?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, you had a planning session last week, I believe?
Yes.
And I don't see any of the strategic planning session minutes in this, and I'm just wondering, since that was not open to the public, if there are going to be detailed minutes coming out, because that's the standard, you have detailed notes coming out from those planning sessions. I'm just wondering if they will be coming out later, or are they?
That was a
Yes.
preliminary meeting, so it really is still a work in progress. So there will eventually be information coming out of that, but we're still working on what we discussed at the planning session. CFO Ballard?
Your worship, all the lists of projects, which it's just compiling the list and getting all the things together. But all of that comes forward when I do the community input meeting every year, so to get input and, get community feedback on the projects. So that list will come out, so everything which went into it comes out.
I think there's supposed to be some minutes that come out with it as well, though. I'm not sure, but that's what has happened in the past.
Your worship, there'll be minutes on the next one, I just didn't get an opportunity to complete them.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
With regards to the sign bylaw, I'm just wondering, you struck out, and I don't remember what page it was, I think 17. You struck out number 16 and 17 with regards to posters posted on
Poles and things and having to come and ask permission, yeah.
Right, so you cross those off, but you have still 2 others. So I'm just wondering, so are posters like that still allowed, but they just have to be removed within 7 days? Is that what the intent is of that?
I believe it's 45 days. Did we leave it at 7 days or 45?
7 days.
7 days, yeah.
Okay, so people are still allowed to have
Yes.
community events, Terry Fox run, all
Yes.
that kind of stuff? Okay, thank you very much.
No, go ahead.
Okay, and then again, with the sign bylaw, I'm just, let's see, where you can only have certain signs in public spaces, owned, public spaces being spaces that are owned by the Village of Ashcroft or right away. And I'm just wondering, there's no pylon signs on that. Is that, is that supposed to be there? It said sandwich boards are allowed, inflatables, directional signs, and portable signs, and banners, but no pylon sign, is that correct?
What page are you referring to?
I think it's, I don't have a page, I think it's page 17. Page 17.
Only banner signs, sandwich board signs, inflatable signs, directional signs, or portable signs are permitted in public places.
Hmm.
Number 18, page 17.
No, so it doesn't look as if it was ever there,
So
so.
there's no pylon sign. So I'm just wondering about the River Inn sign. It's on, I believe that's your space, I believe that's village property, is it not?
It's
Is it
MOT.
highway?
Mhm.
Is it highways? Okay, okay. So highway is allowing that sign? They actually did allow that, oh, okay, that's news to me, I thought they, okay.
I know.
And any sign that would be like that, for instance, the sign for Ashcroft Terminal that you have put up, that is end of public road, is that on Ashcroft land?
That is on Village of
That's
Ashcroft.
on Village of Ashcroft,
Yes.
okay, so that is a pylon sign. So would that one be coming down, or is that grandfathered, or how does that work?
As far as I understand, that would be grandfathered because it is in place at this time. It would apply to new signs or signs that come in the future.
Okay, and if that sign, something happens to that sign, or any other sign, for instance, I was thinking of River Inn more, and it deteriorates, in the next section it says reconstruction. It talked about if it has to be reconstructed, a sign, then that sign is, has to then follow the standards. So that sign would not be allowed to be there then. Or in the case of, like, if you have the poles, can the person replace the sign part? The standard is still there for the pylon, but can they replace it or put something on top of it if a sign deteriorates? Can they do that and still be grandfathered?
I'd have
Or
to
do
check
they then
into.
have to take out that sign, if they're doing any kind of reconditioning at all to a sign?
I'd have to check on that and get back to you. I don't know
Okay, I
off the
think
top of my head.
that was on that same kind of page that was talking about. I just couldn't reconcile that information. Any questions? Okay, I'll ask them. Time for that?
Sure.
With regards to the subdivision bylaw, I'm just wondering, it has a huge bylaw, and I was just wondering if council would entertain and discuss this, just to do first reading instead of first and second reading, because it's such a long bylaw, and it should be looked at very carefully. And I only had a chance to look at it, in the last, well, actually the last couple of hours. So I did rush through it, and I'm not sure if I got everything, but anyway, I'll ask a couple of things. I'm just on behalf of council asking, just to go with first reading rather than first and second. So you decided not to do any underground utilities, and you're just doing overhead utilities, and I'm just wondering what the rationale for that was, considering, you know, underground utilities are protected from wind and falling trees, and they're covered by the developer when a development is first going in, so it's cheaper when a development is first going in than to retroactively try to do that. Aesthetically, it's much more pleasing to have underground, and there's often less maintenance, and it's safer to have underground. So I'm just wondering why the overhead.
That's directly as a result of the survey that we had back, where we asked Ashcroft residents what they prefer, and we clearly laid out what the costs were that were associated with having underground servicing as opposed to overhead. And underground servicing adds quite significantly to the cost of development per lot. And so the majority of the surveys that came back indicated that people did not feel strongly about having underground, feeling, from one or two of the comments, I think it was that this was going to be prohibitive. If we said that they had to do underground servicing, it might be prohibitive in encouraging developers to come here because it would add so much to the cost of development per lot.
Okay.
Doesn't mean they can't.
Doesn't mean
That's
they
right.
can't, it just
Yeah.
means that we're not requiring it.
Okay. And then the lighting, it says for urban and rural, it's through the subdivision, so what does that mean through subdivision? That means in rural and in urban areas, street lighting would be required? Is that what I understand that to mean?
That's
Through
what I
subdivision?
understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's similar to the road, I don't know, is it still called Vista Heights Drive or Mesa Vista Drive that goes right out to where the Windwoods live on the end of the Mesa? There is a street light out there,
Okay,
but there are no street lights along it,
okay, so it's,
so.
yeah, there wasn't, I didn't have a chance to see how often the streetlights had to be in, but, okay, so rural and urban would have streetlights. And then I'm wondering about the reservoir on page 92, the reservoir requirement. So we have a reservoir at Mesa Vista property, somewhere near the Inukshuk Trail. It doesn't have any fence, it doesn't have very good vehicle access as far kind of what I can remember. The site doesn't have any finishing, it doesn't have any railings, and all of those are requirements in that bylaw. So again, are those things going to be changed, or is it just kind of grandfathered, whatever we've got now, that stays?
The reservoir on the Mesa Vista subdivision is not actually within the village of Ashcroft boundaries, it's on Crown land.
Right, so that's even worse.
Yep.
So
Some ways.
is it going to be coming?
We are looking at getting access to it, we're making the application, that's in progress right now, so that we have the, the access right away?
The tenure land.
The tenure of land to get to it. But we have no plans at this moment to fence it or do any of that to it.
If it becomes into the property of the village of Ashcroft, then it would be?
We're not asking for it to become part of the village of Ashcroft.
Oh.
We're asking, it will remain part of Crown land, we're asking for land
Oh, I
tenure.
see, like the lease, okay, I get it, okay. The storm water management, we don't have any plans right now in our village, and that was one of the, a whole big paragraph in that subdivision bylaw. And I'm just wondering if that is going to be undertaken by Urban Systems in the next little while, since we do have a development going in place right now, as well as another one that's a possibility where the Porters had talked about. So I'm just wondering, is that the next thing on Urban Systems' to-do list for the village?
That is on the village's to-do list, and in fact, that's, where are we at with that right now?
Your worship, we have identified a grant, which is, I believe, closing end of February, and we'll be trying to get it. These grants are fairly competitive for those
Right,
planning
'cause
sort of
this is
things.
quite important, this stormwater.
Yes.
Absolutely, we realize the importance, and
It's
we,
been identified as a priority
Okay.
by the village.
And my final question, are sidewalks not required in any of in the subdivisions? I couldn't quite understand. It said, commercial, there will be on one side, 1.5 meters. In urban areas, 1.5 on one side for local roadways, and then for collector roadways, 2.5 urban only, and then none on arterial. Did I read that correctly, or is there, for instance, I'm wondering about the subdivision that is going to go in, is there going to be a sidewalk there?
The Landucci one on Government Street?
Yes. it's an arterial highway, so I would read into that there's no sidewalk going to be required, according to these bylaws. I don't know if the old bylaw has.
They're grandfathered. Any developments that are currently in process are governed by our 1986 Subdivision Servicing and Development Bylaw, because that's the one that's in place. This is still a draft.
So does that go for the Porter property as well, that one? Because they did ask for all their subdivision approval.
No, I wouldn't have thought so, because they have no plans to develop it.
Well, they submitted a plan.
The previous developer submitted a plan, but they are no longer involved.
But when Porter submitted their plan, they had the subdivision plan on there as well. It said tentative.
It was merely to give us an idea of what it might look like.
Okay.
It was in no way, shape, or form an official submission. It was merely to give us an idea of what they thought a development on that site might look like.
So just to clarify then, does the subdivision, because it's gone through the subdivision process, there's no rezoning anymore that's required of that property, so they actually don't have to go to the public anymore. Is that not correct? They don't have to
For
go
the rezoning, to get it rezoned so that they can develop it for housing?
No, they've already got it rezoned.
Yeah.
So they only need to have a public input, so they don't need a public input anymore, that's my understanding.
Not.
So, if I may,
Yeah.
Your Worship, again, the same survey that the communities did, and we got the responses back, didn't require sidewalks. They said it wasn't a preferred subdivision that they felt was conducive to bringing in the investors. It was cost prohibitive. So the bylaw doesn't require sidewalks to go in on new subdivision developments unless the developer wants to put them in. Pardon me. And Porters, they're only at the subdivision stage of the actual piece of property. When they sell that, there won't be a public consultation anymore, but that's when the development plan will get brought forward by any proposed developer that purchases the property.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? No? All right. Okay, we move on to bylaws. We move on to the Village of Ashcroft Signage Bylaw number 840/2020 and third reading. What is council's pleasure on this? Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Mayor Roden. I move that council approve the third reading of the Village of Ashcroft Signage Bylaw 840/2020 as presented.
Thank you. Councillor Anstett seconds that. Is there any further discussion? Thank you for making those changes. And we will get an answer about the signs on public land.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And is there any further discussion, comments, questions? Nothing. All right. On the question then, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Davenport. Just tap me on the shoulder if you have something that you're trying to get my attention. Will do. Just throw something at me. All right, we move on to 5.2, CAO report, Village of Ashcroft Subdivision and Development Services Bylaw number 839, first and second readings. That is the motion before us. What is council's pleasure? Councillor Anstett.
I move that council approve the first and second reading of the Village of Ashcroft Subdivision and Development Servicing Bylaw number 839/2020 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Anderson? Discussion. I had a couple of things on here that I wanted to bring forward for changing for the next, for the third reading. There is no mention, as far as I can tell, of the need for parks or trails in a development. And that was something that previous council and this council has identified as being important, especially in a large development on something like the Porter property. So I would like to have something introduced indicating that there is a need for green space, if you will, and trails or pathways in any development, whether we want to say a development over a certain size, because obviously if someone's developing 3 properties only, then it's difficult to put green space in there. Also, I did notice what I suspect is an error on page 168, 1.1 on page 168. And I believe that the very first sentence should read, "The village does require street lighting." It currently reads, "does not require street lighting." So, there's gotta be a faster way of doing this. There is. There we go. So just to see that, that little change. And also just a disparity on page 174, the schematics, page 74, pardon me, do show that there will be a sidewalk on a cul-de-sac, and then on page 156 it says there will be no sidewalks required on cul-de-sacs. So I think that just needs to be, that disparity needs to be cleaned up. And there is still time to make amendments before we go to 3rd reading.
Absolutely.
Now, is that members of the public as well as members of council? If I go home and decide I need more bedtime reading and look through it again and spot something, I can come to you and...
Absolutely, we
Right.
could bring it back prior to taking it to 3rd reading, you can read it as amended.
Right, perfect, thank you. Anyone else have anything else they want to query, comment on, question? Councillor Davenport?
No, not
No.
this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no more discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move on to staff reports, item 6.1, NDIT facade improvement grant application for 2021.
Yay.
Yay. And I would like to move that council supports the Village of Ashcroft submitting a $20,000 grant application to NDIT under the Community Development Business Facade Improvement Funding Stream, and that council will support this initiative throughout the duration of the project. Councillor Toohey with a very vehement second of that one. Any discussion? As far as we know, will NDIT be moving back to 50-50 grants next year?
They haven't said, but it appears that way.
Darn it.
It's fine if you have more than $5,000.
Well, it's still better than nothing.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it is great, because I know on my first term in council, it was very frustrating to have this offered every year and not get the take-up, and it is really great to see the take-up, and I hope that it continues. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor, opposed, carried. NDIT marketing grant application, item 6.2. What is council's pleasure on this one?
What's that?
I don't
What are
do
you
Morse
doing?
I'm afraid I don't do Morse code, so you'll have to speak up. Did I saw Councillor Toohey, did I see your hand go up?
Yes, I'd like to move that council approves of submitting for $20,000 grant application to Northern Development Initiative Trust under the Community Development Marketing Initiative funding stream for development of wayfinding signage, tourist pocket guide, and other marketing materials, and further that we support that.
Wonderful, thank you. Councillor Anderson seconds that. Is there any discussion on this item? No questions, comments? Nope. All right. Actually, I read the Omanika Express newspaper from Vanderhoof every week, and they had a front page photograph of some very attractive wayfinding signage within the village, the district of Vanderhoof. It was very attractive, so I actually brought it into CAO Dick to say that it was really, really smart looking, very clean, very easy to read, very stylish, and it might be something, if we are looking at that throughout the village, to just find out where they got their signs done and talk to them. All right, on the question, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And item 6.3, Thompson Caribou Minor Hockey Association request to allow games at the Drylands Arena. Councillor Anstett.
I move that council approve the TCMHA request to allow gameplay at Drylands Arena, and that TCMHA COVID-19 safety plan be approved, and further that any future edits to the COVID-19 safety plan and gameplay will be reviewed and approved by staff.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Anderson. Any discussion on this? No? Councillor Anstett.
I think with times right now, it's good that we allow our youth to be able to partake in recreational activities, especially within their cohorts and that. I've read through the safety plan that minor hockey's laid out as well as Hockey Canada, and it follows pretty good with local health authorities and stuff. So
Great. Thank
it'd be
you.
nice to see the kids out playing again.
Yes. Sure, there are a lot of kids who want to be out playing again. All right. Nope. Any further discussion? Councillor Davenport?
Is there any reservations or concerns from our staff or anything? Or
Director Benowitz?
Your worship, not at this point in time. We went with minor hockey. We went over their safety plan, and at this point in time, it does put in provisions that if something changes, that alterations can be made depending on what regulations require. But at this point in time, I think our safety plan matches and combine all together, and we should be go at this point in time, depending on what happens with public health officers.
Great.
thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion on the question, all those in favor, opposed, and carried. Move on to correspondence. Request from the Ashcroft and Area Community Resources Society Christmas hampers for a grant in aid of $500. Councillor Toohey.
Thank you, Mayor Roden. I'd like to move that we give the Community Resources Society Christmas hampers a grant of $500 to help with the Christmas hampers this year.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Anstett. And any discussion on this? Thank you. Yes, I had a chance to speak to Esther Lang, and she is concerned about the drop-off or potential drop-off in donations of food items just because of COVID-19. And also, as she notes here, the breaking down of the bulk purchases, which has been a great way of taking advantage when people do give 20-pound sacks of flour, and also a cost-saving measure. It's obviously cheaper to buy in bulk, and that will obviously be severely curtailed this year. Any further discussion? All right, on the motion for a $500 grant in aid to Christmas hampers, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. And we have information correspondence. Any comments on anything therein? There's just one thing I'd like to break out of there regarding the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. I note that my fellow TNRD director and Kamloops Councillor Arjun Singh, having just come off being past president of UBCM, has been elected to the board of FCM, and I would like to propose that we send him a letter of congratulations from the Village of Ashcroft on his appointment. Second, Councillor Anstett. Always nice to see local politicians elected to boards like this representing.
Well, even the president is from Prince George. Yeah.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Unfinished business, we have the task manager starting on page 284. Are there any, I'd like to move that we receive and file, or receive for information, I'm sorry. Councillor Anderson seconds that, thank you. Any comments on anything here? No? All in the question then, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. There is no new business. Item 10.1 Intercommunity Bylaw Enforcement Officer Working Group Minutes. That was a long one. Oops. All right, so this is for information. And does anyone have any questions? No? Councillor Anderson, CO Dick, and there is a meeting of this committee tomorrow in Clinton. That's right. Okay. Do you have provision for Zoom meetings, or is it expected that everyone will be there in person?
We have provision for Zoom meetings, but at this point in time, I think everyone's willing to commit and meet together in person.
And the feeling you're getting is that everyone is very much in favor of this working relationship?
Very
Excellent.
much.
Great. And you said that Sergeant Angman from here is going to be at the meeting tomorrow?
He's been invited.
You've been invited, okay. All right, any more comments, questions, observations? No? All right. And then we have, that's it, pardon me?
We need to move that motion, please.
Oh, okay, sorry, on the motion then, all those in favor, opposed, carried. And my report, anyone have any questions about my report? No, I did receive an email today, and CEO Dick did as well, from Jamie Vera of the Thompson-Nicola Invasive Plant Management Committee about the invasive plant program spreading to municipalities, rather like invasive plants themselves spread, I just realized. So he's very enthusiastic about that. I think that it would be a great benefit to the community to be involved in that and be able to take advantage of their expertise.
Yeah, for sure.
And we do have someone from the TNI MPC, or PMC, based out of the dentist's office building anyway. So, and I know that they did a lot of work in the village of Clinton this past summer, and they were very, very pleased with the results up there. All right, any other questions on my report? No? In that case, we have no closed meeting, so I move to adjourn this meeting. Second by Councillor Anderson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.